there we are. These fables are incredibly influential. They have an incredibly wide reach today in our culture. So, for example, the story of the ploughman and the frozen snake. You know this one? He finds a frozen snake, he puts it inside his shirt falling down, and then the snake bites him and the man dies. And this is surely the inspiration, indirectly or directly, for the Al Wilson song, The Snake. The only difference is that it's a woman who picks up the snake, and the snake bites when she dies. He says, "You knew I was a snake before you let me in." It's like, it's genuinely one of my favourite songs. You can look at me blankly if you want, but I don't care. It's changed our language too. The fox who sees a bunch of grapes, he's a hungry fox, and the grapes are just too high for him, can't reach, and so he dismisses them as unfakes, unripe, or as we might say, sour grapes. That's where it comes from. My favourite fable changes, obviously, but today it is the story of the bat, the bramble, and the gull. The bat, the bramble, and the gull plan to meet and produce trading. The gull has cotton. The bramble has cloth. The bat has to borrow money because he wants to get in on the deal. But the ship carrying the copper and the fabric is wrecked in a storm, and that is why you always see the gull on the shore looking for his copper to see if it's been washed in on the tide. It's why a bramble grabs at your clothes when you go past to see if it's made of his stolen cloth. And that's why bats only fly in the dark, because he's on the run from his creditors. So you see, these fables are fun and popular, and the Greeks loved to create stories around stories. So, in the early 5th century BC, Herodotus, the sort of historian and anthropologist, tells us that Aesop was pals with the celebrity courtesan Rhodopis, who he identifies as a Thracian woman named Dorica, freed, this is all in book 2 of Herodotus, by the brother of the lyric poet Sappho. Dorica and Aesop the story maker, that's the word in Greek, love of poets, were slaves, Herodotus says, to a man named Iadmon on the island of Samos. There is, I should tell you, literally no evidence that any of this is true. You should always be suspicious when famous ancient people know each other in a story. So Adam, I'm going to try and tell you the story of the gull and the bat and the bramble and reciprocity. Animals do favours for each other in some ways, don't they?
Well, they trade. That is absolutely true.
Yep.
In that they just tick and move on.
I'm not taking it. You made it tick. Tick. Bonus fact for people in the room. It literally says animal trading plus reciprocity. Tick. Penguin is sex.
There's lots of mutualism and symbiosis in nature. It's how the networks of life continue to exist. The penguin sex thing is a really interesting example of transactional relations in nature. It's just Adelie penguins again, so female Adelie penguins really like shiny pebbles. The best nests are made with the shiniest pebbles, and sometimes they can't get hold of the shiniest pebbles. And sometimes the young males have shiny pebbles. So sometimes female Adelie penguins give up their most precious assets in exchange for a shiny pebble. Where's Aesop's story about that then?
Adam, given how much we've lowered the tone, I am loath to ask you the following question, but I did promise I would. Could you tell us about the boy and the swallow?
Sexual innuendo dead, because this is the only one that I really like, Boy and the Swallow, and it's associated with the phrase the first swallow of spring. The tale of the young man who sees the first swallow in spring, so he assumes spring is coming, so he takes his coat off and then he burns it. Now, I have a slight issue with why you would do that. He gets rid of his coat completely, rather than just hanging it out, and then it isn't spring at all, and then what follows is a lot of cold weather, and he dies of exposure.
Yeah.
So the moral of that story is
to a tradition which is given a fuller treatment in a text called The Life of Aesop, or sometimes the Aesop Romance, which should give you an idea of its plausibility. It's an amazing sort of quasi-biographical novella. It's fantastical and comic and picaresque. It shows Aesop as a mute and ugly slave who is given a voice when he shares food with a priestess of the goddess Isis. So here's a connection to Egypt, where, again, some of Aesop's fables probably originated. Some of them have scarab beetles in them, for example. We see Aesop being bought and sold, but always outwitting the people around him, including a philosopher, the philosopher's students, and also his wife. Aesop tells fables with important political messages. He becomes an international celebrity, but he forgets the god Apollo when he thanks other deities, namely the Muses, for his success. Apollo is not a god to take this kind of slight lying down, so he frames Aesop for the theft of a sacred cup. This is honestly all in the Aesop Romance. The Delphians, of course we're in Delphi, that's where Apollo's oracle is seated, decide to throw Aesop over a cliff, because that's what you do when someone's stolen cup, apparently. This is a moment which depicts the Pharmakos rite, that's the ritual of killing a scapegoat in order to keep the community cohesive, and, you know, minus someone they're playing against. Aesop dies, unsurprisingly, and the Delphians eventually have to pay recompense for his wrongful death. It is a wildly novelistic and unlikely story, and there's no evidence for any of this either before you get too sad. Don't worry, he probably didn't die being thrown off a cliff by angry Delphians. I mean, he's dead anyway, but you know. The strange story, I think, tells us something really important though, which is that Aesop was, in antiquity, as he is now, a celebrity storyteller. Did he write his fables? Did he just say witty things about animals that other people wrote down? Did he even exist? I don't know. But I do know that this enthusiasm for finding stories from all across the ancient world, from the ancient Near East, from North Africa, and centering them in Greece, shows us something really important, which is that the ancient Greeks knew they needed to hear stories from voices other than their own. Natalie Haynes Stands Up for the Classics was written and performed by me, Natalie Haynes. My guests were Professor Edith Hall and Dr. Adam Rutherford, and our producer was the majestic Miss Mary Ward Lowry.
Next week, Natalie is joined by Dan Snow to talk Tacitus. Off the news, the play that's arrived in London starring 4 leading women, all over the age of 70.
Your love letter to the Paris Olympics. Brown's the other side of the news on LBC. I'm with you tomorrow morning from 7. Meantime, stay safe.
Thank you, Nick. The time is approaching 10 o'clock, and yes, you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where I hope not at risk of hyperbole. I feel that we're sitting down to have a conversation about one of the most unpleasant, widespread domestic scenarios that we have ever encountered during our time together, and it's a very, very long time now. And I think, perhaps helpfully for me at least, it's a time during which I've spoken to many, many people who would be sympathetic to the so-called cause of people trying to set fire to hotels, burning down libraries, attacking police officers, looting Greggs and stealing shoes. I think I know where they're coming from. Do you?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, MPs from across the political spectrum want to see Parliament recalled as ministers meet to discuss their response to riots across England. The government's Emergency Cobra Committee is meeting in Downing Street. Yesterday, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer warned those involved in the unrest will regret taking part and will face the full force of the law. The Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly has told LBC the violence we're seeing has no justification.
There is a very different set of actions here, where people who have been stirred up by far-right voices, by racist voices, often facilitated online, have taken part in violent action targeting mosques, targeting police officers, targeting community facilities, targeting ethnic minorities.
accident has been declared at Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth after a power cut. The emergency department is currently closed to new patients. Bosses say services may be affected throughout the day and some appointments could be cancelled. There's a warning, people are being hospitalised as a result of fake weight loss drugs being sold online. Pharmacists say they're seeing an explosion of unlicensed medication following a shortage in Ozempic. They're advising patients to speak to them or a GP instead. Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice and Policy at University College London, Oksana Pizik, has told LBC it's extremely dangerous.
What we tend to see is that it's insulin, which can be incredibly dangerous. So there have been hospitalizations across the UK, EU, in America, in Austria, because people's blood sugar has dropped so dramatically that they have collapsed.
And former England batter and coach Graham Thorpe has died at the age of 55. He played 100 tests for his country in his 13-year international career.
LBC Sports.
With eToro, the award-winning trading and investing platform.
Team GB have seen their Olympic silver medal downgraded to a bronze in the triathlon mixed team relay. The photo finish has now confirmed the British quartet of Alex Yee, Sam Dickinson moved below the US into third. Germany won the gold. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 171 points at 80.03. The pound buys $1.27 and €1.16. LBC weather, rain in the north will be heaviest in the west, dry with sunny spells in the southeast. The southwest will see some patchy rain, highs of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
Hello, Sky Sports football commentator Peter Drury here. I don't sound like I usually do, because I've been overdoing it recently. You see, Sky is showing more football than ever before this season, as well as the biggest Premier League games, with Sky Sports Plus there's over 1,000 EFL matches too, including every Carabao Cup fixture live. Can I get a water? Thanks. That's better. Upgrade to Sky Sports today. Requires Sky TV. See sky.com for details.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It is 4 minutes after 10, and the first message of the day to bring back Suella Braverman. I hope you've missed me as much as I've missed you, and I derive no pleasure whatsoever from returning during the period of such upset and turmoil. And once again, we find ourselves deriving absolutely no pleasure from having been among the tiny, perhaps, minority of people who feared that this sort of thing's on the horizon. I think all the shows that we've dedicated to what the end game would be, or where the kind of rhetoric deployed by prominent public figures in the media and indeed in politics, where it would lead. And the reason why we know where it would lead on this programme is because we do, perhaps not as much as we used to, but we do talk to people who would be adjacent to the sort of characters that we saw this weekend trying to burn down hotels containing asylum seekers, setting fire to libraries, looting shops, attacking police officers, launching themselves at individuals who looked different from them with venomous fury. We have spoken to some of these people over the years, perhaps not the people who would actually put on a balaclava helmet and go out to terrorise a community, in the case of Southport, already reeling from the grim murders of 3 little girls, one of whom, of course, was the daughter of immigrants. That's something I'm surprised to see has been somewhat overlooked in an awful lot of the coverage. You have the son of people born elsewhere embarking upon a murderous frenzy, and one of his victims is the daughter of people born elsewhere, but the problem apparently is people born elsewhere. Perhaps we can wriggle that one a little bit later. I'm going to talk to you, I think, first about a few of the phone calls we've taken over the years, because I've been in the job, dreadful word, but when I started in this job about 20 years ago, I wasn't particularly engaged in these matters. I was familiar with sort of the National Front. My dad had covered it for the Daily Telegraph in the 1970s and the 1980s. Nick Griffin was bubbling around. I think Farage was still a bit of a fringe figure, and I never really knew that this kind of thing was bubbling under the surface of our society all the time. I knew about the Notting Hill race riots, particularly after I moved to West London and got involved in Carnival. And by got involved in Carnival, I mean got on one on an annual basis. I didn't have any particular role to play or any volunteer type status, but I found out more about it. I have a little bit of history. I know as a Catholic that the Gordon riots in, I think, the 18th century were dedicated to the belief that Catholics were somehow responsible for all the country's ills. I know that Jewish people have been on the end of that particular accusation for centuries in almost all corners of the world. Latterly, in this country, Muslims have come the blame whenever anything awful happened, and indeed they somehow got the blame when the Welsh-born Christian son of two people born in Rwanda committed terrible murders. The speed with which people respond to blame Muslims, partly as a consequence of liars on social media, something else we've talked about a lot in this programme, was almost supersonic. And they never back down, really, these people. They can't. Their lives, their entire careers, of course, have been built upon inciting precisely the sort of violence that we saw this weekend. And it will be minutes, if they haven't done it already, before they start claiming that they warned against it. The people who said we need more robust responses, we need to be tougher on people, we need to get our country back. That's a particularly vicious phrase that I think we'll dig into a little bit later. They've incited these scenes. Make no mistake, calling people, human beings, seeking asylum, having fled war zones and tragedy, calling them illegals, the most dehumanising of terms, having lectures, displaying the phrase "stop the boats," public figures calling for people crossing the channel in flimsy dinghies to be sort of left to drown, people in Parliament who have subscribed to some of the grimmest rhetoric I can ever remember hearing. We know, everybody knows. I tell you what, something that possibly gets missed, they know. You can tell by the way they wriggle. I think Farage this morning is trying to blame it on the policing of Black Lives Matter protests, which of course happened during lockdown and did not contain anything like the attacks upon entirely innocent people that we've seen over the course of this weekend. But they know, and they can't. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? People who've been feeding bile into the public bloodstream for decades about people born in other countries. It doesn't matter that they marry them, have children with them, speak foreign. It doesn't matter. It works. It's a business model. It's a career plan. It's a path to profit. And this is what happens. This is what happens. This is terrorism. These are pogroms. These are attacks upon wholly innocent people for the crime of having been born somewhere else, or having different coloured skin from you, or having different coloured skin from the people who are attacking them. So I'm going to run through a few things that happened to me over the years. There's a moment many years ago, I don't know whether you remember, I think it was before we started clipping things. John in Hounslow. And I've been looking at Hounslow today, bizarrely, because it's my home borough where plenty of asylum seekers are housed, including in leafy Chiswick, where I used to live. But Hounslow published a report at the end of last year describing the unacceptable conditions that asylum seekers face when they are put up in hotels. We may have a little look at that later. But I always remember John in Hounslow because it was the conversation that they always tell you that they're not allowed to have. He literally said to me on the programme, we're going back, 15 years maybe, I think? Was it in this building or the old building? I can't remember. He said, you can't say what you want in this country about immigration without being called a racist. I said, go on, let's say it. I promise I won't call you a racist. And he said, okay, Hounslow is full of Pakistanis and they smell. Well, I think, actually no, he said Hounslow is full of Pakistanis. I said, well, what's wrong with that? He goes, they smell. And I thought, oh Lord. It was in the days before the programme was sort of sometimes making the news rather than simply reporting it. So I felt a little bit of a frisson of fear that possibly this invitation to him to say whatever he wanted to say about immigration was something I'd come to regret. And I said, well, do they smell of them? And he said, God. serious about immigration, very much a sort of UKIP creation. And she told me, and again, I still wasn't massively engaged in these kind of issues. She told me that immigrants got given free shops where she did. Free shops, or £20,000 each to open shops. And I remember thinking, that can't be right. Maybe there's a sort of kernel of truth. Maybe there's a kind of scheme somewhere to help people from particularly difficult backgrounds set themselves up in bit. I can see maybe there's a grant. And I didn't have the facts at my fingertips. I didn't let it slide exactly, but I asked her for proof. I asked her for some sort of evidence, and of course there wasn't any. And then I looked into it afterwards, and it was complete nonsense. But she believed it. She believed it. That people born overseas were getting a better deal than she was. They were getting lots of free stuff. And then not long ago, I think it was possibly only last year, was it? We took a call from someone who at the beginning sounded quite sensible, said she shared a lot of my views. Sometimes my radar bleeps a bit, and I think this is slightly not as it initially appears. And then she told me that her friends in the council had told her that all the immigrants got free cars, all the asylum seekers got free cars. And I thought, well, how do you prove that wrong? Especially if it's all over your Facebook feed, if you're reading it every day, if your feed is full of it. How do you prove it wrong? How do you know? How do you demonstrate to someone? They see a brown face driving a car, which of course was grounds for getting attacked in some towns in this country this weekend. A brown face behind the wheel of the car, that was sufficient grounds for physical attack, vicious, violent, physical attacks. But don't call them far right, whatever you do. Just concerned citizens trying to kick the living daylights out of people who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Attacking homes, attacking shops, attacking libraries, attacking hotels, attacking citizens' advice bureaus in some of the parts of the country where citizens need advice more than they do almost anywhere else. But don't call them 5-star, don't call them far right. So you can't prove that they haven't got free cars. You can give all the evidence you want, but people choose to believe it. And then there was a call that you may remember. It wasn't that long ago. A fellow convinced, absolutely adamant, nowhere near London, lived at the other end of the country, but he knew for a fact that Sadiq Khan had introduced Sharia law in 2 London boroughs and was very keen to do it again. We did it live on air. We spoke to him live on air and showed him the error that he had made, showed him the source of the lie that he had believed. In fact, the original post described Shakira law, which is, it would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. And we showed him in real time, live on the radio. This is not true. So give me another reason for holding the views that he holds. And he hadn't got anything, but he didn't go away. He didn't go away having abandoned those views. So you build an opinion about Islam, immigration, refugees, asylum seekers. You build an opinion based on falsehoods and lies, exaggerations and embellishment. And when you are shown that what you believe is not true, you don't change your mind. You don't change your mind at all. I don't know how you deal with that. I don't know how you deal with that. And then the hotels. I've seen some clips that have popped up on this radio station in the last couple of weeks about asylum seekers apparently being in 4-star and 5-star hotels. They're just not. They are just not. Farage started that as well, driving around with his Fisher-Price binoculars, filming himself going into buildings that used to be hotels and are now asylum centres, and claiming that they were receiving 4-star treatment. You imagine checking in to a 4-star hotel and finding out that the 5 people in the next room reheating their frozen meals in a microwave, well, that was the level of service you were going to get. It's simply not true. Things that are not true. And yet people believe them. And that's why today we've got a problem. We've got a problem because you don't know how to tell the difference between the people who believe things that are not true and the people who just don't care. They can't wait for the opportunity to throw burning torches at hotels full of foreigners. They can't wait for the opportunity to help themselves to mobile phones and Croc shoes and trainers. They're just not there for any even vaguely racist or even political reasons. But they march alongside the people who are. And how do you tell the difference? How many of these people are susceptible to the truth? How many are susceptible to the facts? How many of these people, when they claim that living in a Holiday Inn Express is somehow the lap of luxury, how many of them, when they discover the reality of these scenarios, will go, actually, do you know what? Maybe that's not the thing I should be angriest about today. How much money, for example, was funneled into the pockets of Tory party donors during the PPE scandals? Yeah, I don't care about that. They can buy yachts, but if there's a fella over there getting some crumpets for free, then I'm bloody furious because he's brown. I don't know how many can be brought back to something that once represented normality in this country. My local council, the London Borough of Hounslow, did a report at the end of last year into what life was like in these sorts of hotels. And the findings were pretty damning. They looked at the mental health impacts of the cramped living conditions, the poor food nutrition, the lack of privacy, the lack of health care, the lack of mother and baby provision, and much, much more. The cost of dealing with some of the physical and mental health consequences of this will dwarf the cost of the original accommodation. The safeguarding issues are off the charts. Depression, suicide ideation, gestational diabetes due to poor nutrition, risk of domestic and or sexual abuse. One case study highlighted a 4-year-old child who'd become so withdrawn that they couldn't leave the hotel room. The health professionals consulted suggested the child was suffering at the age of 4 from clinical depression. And what happened to people like that this weekend? They looked out of the window of their substandard unhealthy accommodation, and they saw people drawing their fingers across their throats in one case, or lobbing burning missiles in others, screaming abuse, trying to block doors because they fear that their identity is being eroded. They fear that British values are under threat. And the phrase I think that best explains what happened this weekend is the phrase that Lee Anderson took to spouting relatively recently after arriving in his 3rd political party, having been a Labour politician and a Conservative politician and now a Reform UK Limited politician. A party, by the way, in which 20% of its serving MPs have served prison time for assaulting a British woman. 1 in 5. MPs in Nigel Farage's party has served prison time for assaulting a British woman. Farage himself, of course, married to an immigrant, which makes his children the children of immigrants, just like all the children of immigrants that we're supposed to be hating on at the moment. That phrase, I want my country back, we never talked about it on the show. We never talked about it on the show, and we probably should have done. The reason why we didn't talk about it on the show was because it's a bit of a Pandora's box, isn't it? What do you mean you want your country back? I think that phrase gives permission to people, possibly people who are a bit hard of thinking, if you prefer to see it that way, but it gives permission to people to complaining about asylum seekers being held and expressing family. I think in her first speech to the House of Commons, and a Holiday Inn Express in Tamworth was attacked by racists this weekend. It was the subject of another pogrom, another attempt to terrorise or expel people based entirely upon their ethnicity or their origin. I mentioned that she's from the Labour Party because I don't think many people are blameless in the creation of the environment in which this stuff can happen. Some of them are obvious. Tommy Tenmans, the Spectator magazine, some of the Daily Mail, Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not. The Labour MP complaining because the people of Tamworth want their Holiday Inn back, she said. How many people check into the Holiday Inn that is in the town where they actually live? not checking into the Holiday Inn in Brentford on a regular basis. We want our hotel room. 22 minutes after 10. So here we are. What I don't know is this. What I don't know is what you do with the people who say, I obviously abhor what's being done, but these people have got valid concerns. What do you do with them? The people who are doing the rioting, the people who are attempting to terrorise entirely innocent people, they go to jail. Ideally for a very long time. But what do you do with the people who, I mean, are they in good faith? When they say, the ones who say, oh, I disapprove of the tactics, but they've got a point. Because they haven't got a point. They believe that people are living in the lap of luxury, that immigrants get free shops and free cars, and that Sadiq Khan is introducing Shakira law, and that these hotels are on a par with Claridge's, and the lack of luxury is available to absolutely all of them. So they don't have a point. But what do you do with the people who say that they do? How robust should we be with the people in public life who have given permission to these populists, who have given permission to these racists, the people who have said, go and get your country back? Because if you say, I want my country back, you are saying, go and get it, go and get it. I think Anderson claimed that a travelodge in his own constituency was full of asylum seekers, and then had to backtrack, humiliating, when it emerged that actually it was a bunch of nurses who checked in for a little holiday, a little break from looking after it. Foreign looking, of course, that's a crucial point. So is there such a thing as legitimate concerns in this case? And if there is, and I'm far from convinced that there are, if there are such a thing as legitimate concerns, what's the relationship between them and the rioters, between them and the potential killers, them and the pogromists, them and the race, the violent racists, the looters? What's the relationship between them? And I mean, listen, I'm overloading you with questions today. This always happens when I've been away for a while, but rarely do I return to such scenes as the ones that we've all witnessed in the last couple of days. How do we have this conversation? I'm pretty sure that this has happened because we've given too much space to the inciters. We've given too much space to the dividers. We've given too much space. We've given them season tickets on Question Time. We've given them their own television stations. We've given them newspaper columns and magazine columns. We've given them radio shows. And yet still they claim that they're marginalised or silenced. Still they claim that they're frozen out of public discourse, that their concerns are ignored, and therefore it is inevitable. If I disapprove, but it is inevitable. No! People are trying to burn down hotels containing children, innocent children. I don't know, they have that conversation. Because they're calling for more. We need more attention, we need more space, we need more television shows, we need more appearances on Question Time. I don't know if that's the right answer. I really don't. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Tell me how you think we should conduct this conversation. Do you think I'm going to stop talking? I don't feel like breaking it today.
LBC.
Imagine if you could get the most out of your pre-festival vibes playlist and your can't believe it's over playlist. No need to imagine. The new Samsung Galaxy Buds 3 uses Galaxy AI to automatically adjust sound levels depending on what you're listening to. This one really gets me.
Galaxy AI is here. Buy the new Galaxy Buds 3 today. Require smartphone or tablet operating on Android 10 or above.
What are you doing? Oh, looking for a used car online. Try Spotica. I don't want a car with spots. What? They're the manufacturer-approved used network for Peugeot, Citroën, Vauxhall, Fiat, Jeep, Abarth. They've got over 300 Spotica retailers nationwide. Yeah, and cars with spots. No, there are no spots. They're called Spotty cars. Yeah, S-P-O-T-I. But look, remember when when you thought fish really had fingers. Understandable mistake.
After 2 seconds, and we come out and we have a dialogue with the audience about what they expected, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they related to. And I went in, I had read a little before going in, but I was surprised at how surprised I was by seeing 4 older women on stage. I was like, I haven't seen this before. Right. This is so refreshing. Yeah. I mean,
always say there's always one. Like every
show,
there's always one of my generation.
The mother or the grandmother, whatever.
Or
the eccentric neighbor.
Yes.
Whatever. Yes. But yeah, to have it. And you forgot to mention that we talked about sex too.
You do.
Well, you particularly talk about sex.
Yeah.
Your Zoe character.
Yes.
But yeah, but in a list of things. So we are full service about everything. It's also the play is written for women over 50, so everybody can relate, because I guess our characters are playing even a little bit younger than we are.
And that's Mary Lou, who's playing Zoe, Caroline, you're Marilyn, Captain is Jules, and is Claudia.
2 of the women have children, 2 of the women do not have children. So
in the play.
In the play. So
and why was that important to do?
Well, I think it takes a lot. I think women in their 70s, it takes a lot of courage to not have children, in a way. That women for a long time have had these preordained roles of being wives and mothers. And so when you decide to step outside of that expectation and do something else, it takes a lot of courage. It really does. And so I mentioned Gloria Steinem in the play. And
we had her on the program not that long ago when she was celebrating her 90th birthday.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. So I know her a little bit. And Gloria said one time to me that she loves children. She would love to have children, but she didn't have time to do both well. And she knew she wanted to create a movement for women. And so she couldn't get children into it. But in her generation, she's in her 90s. You can imagine how much of she would have been considered an outlier to her job.
Yeah, I found her really interesting when she was on Line Media stuff with me, that she said she has no role models because
that's right.
We're living so much longer now, particularly women.
Right.
She has blazed this trail, but there's not that many.
I know that are ahead of her. What's funny, they focused so much on her looks when she was 40. She kept saying, well, this is what 40 looks like. And now she's still, well, this is what 90 looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. And if you missed that interview, to our listeners, do go back and listen to it. One US reviewer called the play comedy as comfort food. Why is the humor so important in this play? Marilyn,
I think because, first of all, I think people will recognize, we get a lot of laughter of recognition. I think they are such strong characters and very different. And I think everybody in the audience relates to one of us or all of, like, oh, I've got my friend, oh, that's my mother, oh, that's my daughter, oh, that's her, you know what I'm saying? So I think people are recognizing characters that we're playing, and there's that strong laughter, and it's just so brilliantly written.
How would you describe your character?
Well, let's see, she's a little bit like me. She's an actress turned international wellness guru who's written books and has this incredible business, and she has an unbelievable memory. And so Sandra used a lot of what I've done in my life, although I'm still acting, so Zoe isn't. But yeah,
I'm going to come back to your memory in a minute because we need to get that sometime. Caroline, your character instead, Marilyn?
Marilyn runs a girls' school. So she works with children, and those, she doesn't have personal children, that's her life's work. Those are her children, and I think that that's true of some women, that their work is the thing that they've nurtured their whole life, rather than other human beings, and she gets put out to pasture at a certain age. I think this is true for a lot of women, is that they become more and more invisible as they get older, and so, the idea of being confined just to her husband is not enough for her.
There was a lot of aspects of it, because just coming back to the humour, because some of it was, I suppose, the acceptance, and with some sadness at times, of growing older and what that means, because there is loss of people to be frank at the beginning, or it could be, youth or beauty.
I was going to say, and what is there's the personal loss of, if your currency, or what we talk is your currency, is our looks. We know that as we age, those evolve and change into something else. But when you talked about the play being so funny, this is the #1 priority of our writer and our playwright, because the issues in the play and issues for women, even the way you started your program, are not necessarily a laughing matter, but, you know, a spoonful of sugar is helping the medicine go down, and I think Sandra really, really wants that. Is an opportunity for people to laugh at these things while they're listening.
And laugh
to
at
them.
themselves, you know, because I think we kind of bust people, and we bust each other constantly on stage, so it's really kind of fun.
Yeah,
to have that.
Claudia's character, I think there was a line, I'm probably going to mangle it a bit, so forgive me, but it's something like, as we grow older, as women, we become the men.
Yeah, that's
Gloria Steinem's quote. Yeah, it's a little quote of Gloria's. Yeah. We become the men we wanted to marry. Yeah. That is from
Became the men we wanted to marry.
Yes.
I'm curious, what character did you most relate to? Who are you for characters, or who's somebody close to you in your life?
Probably, I would say, in fact, a bit of an amalgamation of the maybe wanting to be one, but being the other. But I do think that there were these four archetypes that that you kind of see, but then there was, as the play went on, I felt we began to see the intersections between them even more deeply. And I think probably the one thing that came out of it is that the gift of being a woman, which is female friendship.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely, so strong. Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about your memory for a moment.
Sure.
You explain it because it just blows my mind.
Okay, it's called Highly Superior Autobiographical Memory, or HSAM, and it means basically that I remember almost every single day of my life. If you give me any day within my lifetime, I'll tell you what day of the week it was, what I was doing on that day. They tested me, they wired me, put me through an MRI, they took 300 measurements of my brain. They found 9 areas 10 times larger than the normal brain. And, you know, people always say, is it a blessing or curse? I always say it's a blessing for me, it's a curse for my husband, which is why I'm on my 3rd and final. And I drive my friends crazy because, you know, it's like...
Are you always, is it all to do with... It's not all to do with dates. It's
not. It's everything. A little bit.
Everything. So, like, if I asked you, I don't know, like when you were 13, I don't know, on your birthday, you'll remember that day.
Oh my God! Absolutely, absolutely. What I did on that birthday. Okay, so you're talking about when I was 13 years old. So that was 1965. It was a Tuesday, and I had a Roaring '20s party with all the girls in my class. And it was like so much fun. I could do every birthday in my life. I can do every Christmas in my life. All my, you know, people.
Is it not exhausting?
No, it's like having the best, most organized system. It's like having a computer in your brain that you can easily access.
I am very, very envious. There's a lot of points in my life I'd like to remember. What is it like to be around that?
Well, when I first came with friends, and I would say, remember when we did such and such, and she'd go, no, we didn't do that day. We did it this day. And I went, so yes, it's very challenging because my memory is always being challenged because I'll remember things a little bit off date or off subject, and Mary not only remembers the date, she also often remembers what she weighed on that.
Oh yeah,
I don't keep track of that, I'll tell you that.
So I'm thinking because the Zoe character was very, what would I say, image conscious,
physical, and
Is that you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've worked hard, and I used to weigh 55 pounds heavier than I was. I went through, like, after my father died, I was 17 years old. I ate my feelings. I was very unhealthy. I didn't even realize it. Then my mother took ill with arthritis, and then I wanted to help her. But, you know, after she passed away, I decided I would not let their deaths be in vain, and I became this obsessed student of health. I could read something once and cross-connect it because of my memory. So I started to see my life not through the filter of vanity and weight, but through the filter of health. And by getting healthy, everything else kind of fell into place for me.
Interesting. We're going to speak about wellness a little bit later in the program. Just before we just go to, what's it like in New York?
Oh, we love it so much here, and I don't feel like we are in London yet because we've just been in previews. Tonight is our opening night.
How are you feeling?
It's nervous, excited. This is like hard fun, you know. So as soon as we get through tonight, I feel like then we'll start to really explore that we're here. But I think one of the things that has just been so thrilling is that community. We are now part of a larger community of women. You know, every time we add a city, I just feel like we are annexing more and more women into our hearts and sharing more and more with them.
Well, I wish you all the best of luck tonight.
Thank you.
Break a leg. so much for coming in studio as well. 84844 if you would like to get in touch with the program. Now, this weekend marked 10 years since the St. George's Kingdom of Iraq was invaded by the jihadist Islamic State group. It's an area that was inhabited by the Yazidi religious community, a minority ethnic group who mostly lived in Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Turkey. Thousands of men were killed, thousands of women and children were captured, some were enslaved, many were raped. Most ended up in internationally displaced people's camps, or IDPs, in Iraq's northern Kurdistan region. Now, the Iraqi government have decided to close those camps. They're asking Yazidi women to return to Sinjar. One of the organisations trying to help these women is Women for Women International, a non-profit organisation who work with women across the world. Joining me now are Khalida Kalalazgi, who is a program officer for Women in Iraq and is Yazidi himself, and Sarah Bocut, a managing director, who is joining me also in studio. Welcome to you both. Thanks for having us. Sorry, the microphone was off there just for a moment. Good to have you with us. Khalida, maybe I could start with you. I mentioned that you are Yazidi yourself, and you were, in fact, there when IS attacked. What can you tell us about what happened? And I do just want to give people a warning that there might be some details in the discussion that people find upsetting.
Thank you so much. Good morning.